Hey, oh yeah, there we go. Alright, it's time to finally get back into some Castlevania action. A few months ago, I looked at Castlevania games on the old Game Boy, and despite finding a new love and appreciation for Belmont's Revenge, the other games I felt were pale imitations of their classic console counterparts and warehouses for Dracula's rope collection. But now, we're with the Game Boy Advance, so maybe better technology, maybe more horsepower is just what handheld Castlevania needed. But more significantly, in my opinion anyway, we're past the release of Castlevania Symphony of the Night. I've said it before, but it bears repeating. That game forever changed the landscape for Castlevania. It helped coin the term Metroidvania. I mean, it's right there in the name. Metroid. And as this next marathon is going to demonstrate, Metroidvania is where Konami wanted the series to go from this point forward. Koji Igarashi struck gold, but to my surprise, he had nothing to do with this next entry, Castlevania Circle of the Moon, released in June 2001 as a launch title for the Game Boy Advance. This game was under the direction and design of Koji Hori, which is funny because it makes me think Konami was like, alright, new Castlevania for the Game Boy Advance, get me Koji Igarashi. Well, we don't have Koji Igarashi, but we do have Koji Hori. Good enough, get his ass out there. This was his first Castlevania, as I found out, and until this game, when not acting as graphic designer for various projects, he primarily contributed to stuff like rhythm games like Beatmania GB for the Game Boy Color. So this is new territory for the guy, and we'll see how things play out, but looking into the future, he will return for Portrait of Ruin and Order of Ecclesia as map designer. Oh boy. I first sunk my teeth in Circle of the Moon in, I think it was January of 2003. My brother got it as a gift for Three Kings Day, one of the handful of times my folks actually celebrate that holiday. We even got the grass, put it in the shoebox, you put it under the bed, and the next day you're supposed to get gifts. It was weird. But then after a while, my parents probably realized they're not really into that Jesus shit, and then we just stopped doing it. I think they decided Christmas is enough for them. It's certainly easier on the wallets, but... that's how it was. But my brother wasn't that big on Castlevania, but seeing as I had some familiarity with it around then, I decided to give it a shot, and the first thing I remember thinking to myself was, I can't see shit. It's no secret if you ever played this game on an original Game Boy Advance, Circle of the Moon's graphics were notoriously dark. You know, other GBA games at the time, like Super Mario Advance as an example, deliberately washed out the color palette so that players can have an easier time seeing the graphics on the screen. Which sure meant they looked ugly as shit when you played it on an emulator or with a GBA SP, the one that introduced a lit screen, but on an original GBA wide model, they looked just fine. Circle of the Moon didn't give a fuck, it's Castlevania! It's all about that gothic deco, ruinous caverns, and spooky skeletons. You couldn't see the graphics? Fuck you. It's been a long time since I played the game, and I'm surprised to see that my old save file from years ago is still there, but I clearly remember my first time with the game took me a bit, and part of it was because I had a hard time seeing shit. For what it's worth, the game graphically is great. It doesn't beat Super Castlevania 4 or Rondo of Blood, but it does look like an evolution of the Game Boy games, and there's not a single rope in sight, thank fuck. I do wish Nathan had more than 3 sprites for walking and running. He could look a little limited at times, but he makes up for it with all the kooky things he can do as he learns more abilities down the road. The music's great too. The soundtrack is full of a lot of remixes from previous games, including Bloodlines and Castlevania 64, which fans of those probably felt validated as shit, I imagine. But there's also some original themes here too, and legit, I love Nathan's theme, Awake. It's a great piece to kick off your next Castlevania journey. That said, I recall liking Castlevania Circle of the Moon as a teenager, but it wasn't one I was willing to head back into anytime soon. Well, time to see if I can remember why. Let's look at Castlevania Circle of the Moon. The year is 1830, and worshippers of chaos gather to resurrect their lord Count Dracula. One of Dracula's most dedicated servants, Camilla, successfully manages to call Dracula back from the depths of hell, but his powers aren't fully restored yet, leaving him vulnerable. Thankfully for him, several vampire hunters make their way to the castle just in time for Dracula to plan his midnight snack. But instead of the Belmonts, these lovely folks are Morris Baldwin, who in his youth managed to defeat Dracula but is getting too old for this shit nowadays, his son Hugh, vampire hunter in training and an asshole, and our hero for this journey, Nathan Graves, also a vampire hunter in training, and that's about it. But he isn't nearly as much as a shit stain as Hugh. In order to complete the ritual and restore his power completely, Dracula must sacrifice a strong soul in the upcoming full moon, and always one for cruel irony, Dracula decides to kidnap Morris and eventually use him as the sacrifice to regain all of his powers, sending Nathan and Hugh to the catacombs below since I assume he isn't powerful enough to deal with them now. But seeing as this is a Metroidvania, Nathan and Hugh survive that long ass fall down and make it their mission to rescue Morris from being Dracula's num-nums and preventing him from reaching his full power. And though the logical thing would be for the two to stick together, Hugh insists that Nathan would just get in the way and tells him to leave everything to him. Spoiler warning, Hugh never rescues his father, the loser. It's up to Nathan to ultimately do everything because he doesn't have his head up his ass. And that's the basic gist of it. There isn't much story beyond that, seeing that Nathan never really encounters anyone else besides Dracula's minions, who don't tell us anything we don't already know, Dracula's bad news. But every once in a while, Nathan does run into Hugh, who gets increasingly more hostile to Nathan. The insecurities are off the fucking charts with this guy. But to cut Hugh some slack, he's slowly succumbing to Dracula's influence, who is using the darkness and insecurities in his heart to eventually turn Hugh to the dark side. That is until Nathan literally whips some sense into him, restoring Hugh to normal in no time. With Hugh rescued, Nathan finds the key to Dracula's chambers to prepare for the final confrontation, which, I don't know, that just rings weird to me. We need an actual key to enter Dracula's room. He couldn't seal his place with a magic portal or something? This is just a fucking key to a door. But Nathan confronts Dracula and manages to get the upper hand. But Dracula, despite not being able to sacrifice Morris, escapes and achieves a more powerful form to confront Nathan. I guess he just needed the full moon then? Is Dracula a werewolf? A Saiyan? I don't know. Either way, Dracula is no match for Nathan's giant magical cock, and Dracula is sent packing to the great beyond once more. With Dracula defeated, the gang watches as Castlevania crumbles to dust as tradition would have it. It's a standard Castlevania plot, really no more complex than the NES games, honestly. But seeing as it's the first Castlevania for a new handheld, one that was more focused on the gameplay aspect of it, this is just fine. It's not like I play Castlevania for its narrative anyway. I think I said that before, but it does bear repeating. So Nathan Graves isn't a son of Dracula, nor is he a Belmont, but he's plenty capable with his whip, simply called the Hunter's Whip, which is not as cool sounding as the Vampire Killer, but it gets the job done. However, Nathan naturally can't aim in multiple directions and he can't do the whip dangly thing. If you hold the attack button down, he'll spin the whip in place, which is great for neutralizing projectiles. It's a fucking godsend against the plant creatures later down the road, but it doesn't have the precise control of the Vampire Killer, so it's a little clunky. He also has access to sub-weapons, utilized no differently than in the classic games. There's the knife, the axe, the holy water, the stopwatch, but none of these really matter because the cross is categorically the best one. You can fire around 3 at once. A lot of enemies have a weakness to holy magic in this game, so it hurts like a motherfucker. Aim it just right and you can score a bunch of hits at once, and it doesn't require too many hearts to use per cross. The only problem is that it's rare, and knowing this, I make sure to do what I can to hold onto it for dear life. Fortunately, if you accidentally pick up a sub-weapon you didn't mean to grab, you can pick up your previous one before it vanishes into God knows where. But that's easier said than done in large vertical areas with tiny platforms where you can find yourself picking up a sub-weapon in the middle of a bunch of precise jumps. Shit, son of a... God damn it. Ugh. Alright. No, I'm not leaving without the cross. Nope. I'm gonna go back down and get it. Nope. I'm serious, this thing is just all reliable, and in that optional battle arena, it's your best fucking friend. You won't find a better weapon for these kind of scenarios. Nathan is quite slow in the beginning. I mean, goddamn, who turned up the gravity in this castle? One of the first upgrades you get are the dash boots, letting Nathan travel much faster on the ground, but I have to wonder, why even bother with this default walk of his when it's immediately made moot just a few minutes in? Also, dashing in this game, this is one of those games where you have to double tap on the D-pad to get Nathan running, and you get used to it. It's not terribly cumbersome, but this game is full of platforming jumps and large ass rooms that pretty much require you dashing at all times, so you're doing it a lot. And in some areas like the clock tower, honestly any area that has a shitload of vertical scaling, it could be a little tiring and finicky. Alright, well, I might as well get into one of the major things I don't like about Circle the Moon, and that's the castle's design. This game is unapologetically filled with large ass rooms with repetitive as fuck platforming design. It will repeatedly recycle set pieces and platforming to the point where I feel some rooms feel like optical illusions, giving me a constant sense of deja vu. You won't find another Castlevania game where I pause the game to check the map as many times as I did for this game, even on my second playthrough, because fuck me, man, I could not for the life of me remember the exact routing for where I needed to go, sometimes within the same damn
damn room. And it's not just the structure of the castle, it's the enemies too. The variety in enemies is kind of lacking in this game to start with. Not too far in, you'll start encountering different variations of the same flying demons, grizzly bears, these upright archdemon guys that shoot a bunch of lasers at once, and skeletons that don't bring anything different to the table other than stat differences, though I love the athletic skeletons. Look at them spread out. Not only that, this game loves throwing enemies at you repeatedly in the exact same formations whenever there's a long horizontal stretch. I think I know why they decided to do this, but on a surface level, it gets very samey in no time. But let's get into why they probably did this. So Nathan's default moveset and such, it isn't terribly different than your standard Belmont. But what really sets Nathan apart from the rest is the dual setup system, or DSS. Basically, Nathan can eventually amass a bunch of these cards that, when combined, can give Nathan a humongous variety of different effects, ranging from basic stuff like changing the element of his whip, make it fire-based to take care of plants or ice guys, or change it to ice and free certain enemies to use as platforms, ripped right out of Metroid. It could be used to help Nathan absorb elemental attacks as well, depending on the combinations used, and when handled appropriately, it can turn areas like the underground sewers into a complete cakewalk when you use it to nullify ice attacks, since most if not all enemies in this area are ice elemental. DSS can help Nathan restore health from a standstill. It can juice the fuck out of your dash, making Nathan as fast as Sonic. It can increase your attributes like strength to hit things really fucking hard. It can temporarily give you different weapons like a large slow ass hammer, a humongous whip sword, good old fisticuffs. It can surround Nathan with protective shields or give his dash a damaging aura. It can let Nathan summon a bunch of powerful creatures nuking the screen no different than an item crash in Rondo of Blood, and far be it from me to mention the absolute best combination, the one that transforms Nathan into a weak ass skeleton that dies to anything in one hit, sure, but every time you throw a bone, there's a 1 in 8 chance it'll be a big bone that's the most powerful attack in the game. It can one-shot any enemy and most bosses. Everyone in Castlevania will fear Nathan Graves, the Bone Master.
Schnipp, schnapp! Da, ja! Ich bin Schnappi, das Krokodil! Da was Ägypten, direkt am Nil! Ja! Und Schnappi ist so verletzlich! Dann wenn ich schnapp, den fresse ich!
There is so much potential with what Nathan can do with the dual setup system, and it is without a doubt the best thing about Circle of the Moon. Half the fun of getting new cards is just seeing what they do combined with other cards you already have. And I mean, check this chart I found on Reddit. It's nuts with the amount of shit Nathan can do here. However, this is even assuming you actually manage to get these fucking cards, because these, like almost everything else in this game, are dropped from enemies, and they're rare. I, for the life of me, don't understand why they designed this the way they did. Like in Symphony of the Night, there's some basic RPG elements in this game. As you kill more enemies, Nathan will gain experience, and he'll eventually level up, giving him more HP, strength, magic power, luck, all the standard bells and whistles. But unlike Symphony of the Night, Circle of the Moon doesn't have a shop for you to buy stuff like healing items from, nor is there anywhere in the castle where you can find new equipment and such from hidden rooms, treasure chests, or as rewards for beating bosses. In fact, outside of movement upgrades, you don't get shit from beating bosses in this game. You would expect at least a life up to restore your health or something like that, but Circle of the Moon doesn't do that at all. The castle only offers 3 things for exploration: health, mana, and heart upgrades, which is appreciated for sure. I'm not going to say permanent increases to my stats aren't great, but that's literally all the castle gives you, no strings attached, and I'd argue even that loses some points because just leveling up offers you the same thing, albeit at a slower rate. Like I said, the only upgrades the game gives you after enough progression are movement upgrades. A double jump, which is fine, there's nothing wrong with that. A wall jump that is only really useful for when it's needed, it's very limited elsewhere. A shoulder tackle lets you break certain blocks, but is damn near useless everywhere else. It's not even good as an attack, the slide does more damage. There's the ability to push boxes. That's it. And man, I gotta tell you, the castle spans the ever-living shit out of these blocks that you can't do anything about until the second half of the game, so most of your journey until then results in a lot of blue balling. You get a new area to explore, new rooms to discover, wait, fuck, shit, nope, brown box. They're fucking everywhere, it's annoying as shit, contributing to the earlier issue of the castle's design feeling super repetitive. Finally, you get a super jump late game that lets you finish off rooms you couldn't fully explore before, maybe get some HP or mana pots you likely missed. To get anything else, I'm talking more cards for Nathan to experiment with, equipment to beef up your stats, fucking regular ass healing items or mana restores, you gotta get them from enemies. And the drop rates in this game, my god, they're abysmal. And until the re-release courtesy of the Advanced Collection, which is likely how you're playing these games nowadays, you don't even know what enemy even drops something. Granted, a couple of things. Save points are everywhere, which fully restore your health and mana, and it's more than likely you're going to kill everything along your path anyway, and no matter what, you at least get experience points and level up, and Nathan will get pretty fucking strong in this game by the end of it. Shit, it's only because of all that grinding that I was able to do that optional battle arena where you can't use magic and have to rely solely on your whip and sub-weapons like classic Castlevania. But most of the time, you ain't getting a goddamn thing because the game is immensely greedy with drops, and I can't stress enough how much this really stinks up the joint, because even when you know what enemy drops what you're looking for, you could be spending an absurd amount of time repeatedly grinding them for a chance to actually get it, which I realize that isn't a problem mutually exclusive to Circle of the Moon, but in a game where all the cool shit and even the basic shit comes from these fuckers, it's highlighted more than ever. There were several times during my playthrough where I felt like I was in a fucking screensaver because shit man, I'm just trying to get some new cards to play around with. On my first playthrough, the one I recorded with my sub Discord, I barely scratched the surface on the number of cards I could pick up because my luck was just that bad and I didn't want to make every recording session a grind fest and bore people to death. But later in my second run through, recorded on my own time, I made an effort to get more things, and Jesus H. Crisco, I spent 20 to 30 minutes just repeatedly entering and re-entering rooms, smacking the thing of interest and trying to get some drop, but it just wasn't happening. And this isn't like trying to get the Crisagrum in Symphony of the Night. I mean, yeah, that weapon was also rare, but Shmoos had little to no health and placed right before a room entrance, so you can farm them and reset the room lickety split. But in this game, rooms are massive and enemies can be super durable, so grinding some of them can be a massive slog.
And the fucked up thing is, you have to do this if you want to get more cards the legit way.
Let's face it, I bet you 10 to 1 most people playing Circle of the Moon aren't actually grinding cards, because technically, Nathan has access to all the cards as soon as he gets his first 2 in the opening minutes of the game, thanks to the game's most well-known glitch. So you need at least 2 cards to start using the dual setup system, right? But if you pause the game as soon as you activate a card combination and highlight cards you don't have, the game will act as if you do have them, and there you go. You can use any card combination at any time, assuming you have the mana for it. I feel this is the only way, on your first playthrough I should stress, that you can actually play around with the main mechanic of Circle of the Moon, because if you try and grind for these sons of bitches, I tell you, this game can be fucking miserable. For what it's worth, when you beat the game once, you unlock Magician mode, and in this mode, Nathan's stats are as low as hot, moist balls, but you have legit access to every card available. So the fun of this mode is utilizing some game-breaking combinations as early as the first boss, which for some is a godsend, because starting with this guy, the chained-up goat dude, I fucking forgot his name. This game can get pretty damn hard. Enemies start doing big damage towards Nathan out of nowhere, and the bosses start cranking up the challenge big time, like the fight against the twin dragon heads. Have fun with that one, unless you whip out your boner.
Schnipp, schnapp!
Without utilizing the card system, these guys, especially by the second half, will make short work of Nathan. But you likely won't have many cards on you at all until after you already beat the game and use Magician mode, and your first playthrough might feel particularly empty because you may or may not get to play around with the real bread and butter of Circle of the Moon's gameplay.
With that in mind, if your first playthrough was that scattered, would you be enticed to even consider a revisit? It's hard to say.
And even then, just trying to get anything other than stat upgrades requires grinding too, which it just isn't fun to do on a repeated basis. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy the casual grind. Shit, I have to be as a fan of RPGs. Under the right circumstances and with enough podcasts on standby, it could be pretty relaxing. But Circle of the Moon requires too much of it, too often, just to make the game more than a standard whip and jump. It requires too much of it just to get equipment worth a damn for Nathan. It requires too much of it to make the unique aspects of Circle of the Moon stand out. But at the very least, there is that glitch that lets you use any card combination as you see fit, so you don't have to grind for the cards at least. And maybe with proper usage, you don't have to grind for equipment and whatnot if the cards can make up for the lack of stats. I know some of you might think I'm being a little harsh to this game, and I know a few friends that love Circle of the Moon. They consider it some of their favorite games in the series, but I'm also looking at the game as designed, and without considering the card glitch, Circle of the Moon can be a real slog. I find the castle design lacking, the rooms are overly large and guilty of copy and paste architecture, the absence of finding anything outside of stat buffs is a little weak, and enemy placement can be downright repetitious. It's all for the sake of giving you more things to farm, sure, but it just looks and feels low effort. But if you're at all curious, I recommend getting yourself that infographic showing you what card combination does what, and utilizing the card glitch to use whatever card combination you please as early as your first playthrough, because Circle of the Moon otherwise is honestly one of the weaker Metroidvanias in my opinion, despite the card system being legitimately great.
And before I wrap this up, I realize there are other modes in Circle of the Moon that you unlock as you continuously replay the game. First is Magician mode, then there's Fighter mode where you have no access to the card system at all. It just ups your strength and defense and that sort of thing. It's like as pure old school Castlevania as you can get. And I think afterwards is like a shooter mode or a thief mode. One increases your luck, so you're getting the drops much more consistently, and the other is where you get a lot more hearts for your sub weapons, and that's your primary source of damage. But look, Circle of the Moon is not lacking for replayability, but one, you have to continuously beat the game to get those other modes to unlock. I think they're sequential. You got to beat Magician mode to get the Fighter mode, got to beat Fighter mode to get Shooter mode, so on and so forth. And that's a lot of Circle of the Moon that you have to replay to get to a mode that might be more up your alley if you really weren't a fan of that initial playthrough where you don't have a lot of luck, you don't have all the DSS cards, you're down to square one with Nathan, and I feel the other modes don't really remedy the situation. It's only if for those that really liked their first playthrough to consider, and I don't necessarily view it as the cure-all to Circle of the Moon's inherent problems. So I'm aware of those modes, but I'm not about to beat Circle of the Moon 4 or 5 times to talk about them for as little as it changes the game. So I just wanted to get that out of the way first. That said, we're just getting started on this Castlevania handheld marathon. So next up to bat is the second of the GBA games. This is Castlevania Harmony of Dissonance. And like Circle of the Moon, it has been years, I think well over a decade and a half, maybe 2, since I last played the game. And I remember beating it, but I don't remember much else outside of graphics and music. I'll elaborate more on that in the video proper, but thank you all for tuning in. Before I give you off the proper send-off, let's thank some more patrons. All right, so shout outs to more of my $10 patrons over at my Patreon. It's patreon.com/Somecallmejohnny. Not only help support this channel, but the Let's Play channel too, the Super Gamer Brothers, where I do Let's Plays with my brother Elliot, my friend Matt, and my uncle Greg. It's a blast. I hope you guys have been enjoying the Halo playthrough so far. All right, here we go. Nakagami Penguin, Alan Knight, Autobot ODST, Dirty Curdy, that's in all caps, Serial Chiller, DeLong Schlong, Spy the Cuttlefish, Boosted D-Drag, Blank Screen TV, A Purple Dragon, Average Joe, Wolfang, Jawbreaker Alumni, Versatile, Dr. Flash 55, Caro Bloodgrave, Curve Swords 21, Solar Dragon 719, Deactive, Silly Drago, no, Drago, there's 2 G's there. Torizo, there's even a pronunciation guide here in parentheses, Torizo, I appreciate that, thank you. TJ Sylvia Dakage, TJ Sylvia Dakage, yeah, there we go, that's also has a pronunciation guide, Kage, Gizmo, Sonic 21 Blast, Blue Dino, One More Sonic Robot, Gumby, David Bolton Media, Manuel Gonzalez, Thomas Bond, Crazy Armored, Daku Samurai, Dom Nick, Blaster Blade, Kind Guy Dan, Deltex, Leaf Erickson, Thickless Mage, International Treasure, I'll be the judge of that, The Demon Man, Dan Moore, Hanson Aguatu, JMB 723, Chase Wharton, that guy Eddie, Peyton Talented but Lazy, One Hammy, there's 3 Y's at the end of that, Percival Burgers, Gamer Zorro, Angry Doorman, and finally for today, Certified Rajang Hater. So all that and more at the end of the next video. As always, thank you all for tuning in. Have yourselves a fantastic night, and take care.